One of Hollywood's most beloved movies. Nearly 20 years in development limbo. Corporate mergers, streaming wars, billion-dollar acquisitions. The complete collapse of an entire entertainment model. And somehow, on the other side of all of that, The Devil Wears Prada 2 is actually happening. This isn't just a sequel story. This is a 20-year Hollywood war, and Disney won it. Let's get into it. The original and why it wouldn't die first. Let's go back to 2006. The Devil Wears Prada arrives in theaters with relatively modest expectations. Based on a best-selling novel, strong cast, Meryl Streep and Anne Hathaway. A story about fashion journalism and the most terrifying boss in the history of cinema. Nobody expected what happened next. The film made hundreds of millions at the box office. Critics loved it. Audiences loved it. And Meryl Streep's Miranda Priestly didn't just become a movie villain. She became a legend. Quotes from the film entered everyday conversation. Scenes became memes before memes were even a thing. And here's the part that really matters. The movie didn't fade. Most films from the mid-2000s slowly disappear into the background. The Devil Wears Prada kept finding new audiences, year after year after year. A new generation of 20-somethings entering competitive industries would discover it and immediately see themselves in Andy Sachs. Another group would rewatch it and find new things to appreciate in Miranda. It had the rarest quality in Hollywood. It stayed relevant, which makes what happened next even more baffling. Nobody made a sequel. Why did it take 20 years? Here's where the story gets interesting. For most of the 2000s and 2010s, Hollywood was chasing a very specific formula. Superheroes, action franchises, massive spectacle, explosions, the kind of movies that could sell toys and theme park rides and video games. A fashion industry comedy drama starring two brilliant actresses talking about clothes and ambition? Not exactly top of the priority list. So the sequel that fans kept asking about never got traction. Studios explored ideas. Rumors circulated every few years. Cast members got asked about it in every single interview they ever did. And the answer was always some version of, maybe someday. Meanwhile, and this is the part most people weren't paying attention to, the entertainment industry was quietly being taken apart and rebuilt from scratch. Streaming arrived. Traditional moviegoing changed. And the studios that had spent decades accumulating film libraries suddenly realized those libraries were worth a lot more than anyone had thought. Familiar brands, proven fan bases, long-term cultural relevance. That was the new gold. And The Devil Wears Prada had all three. The Disney acquisition and the long game. Now here's where Disney enters the story. Disney's acquisition of major entertainment assets from 21st Century Fox was one of the biggest corporate deals in Hollywood history. And when it happened, most people focused on the obvious stuff. Marvel characters coming home, science fiction franchises, television libraries. What people weren't talking about? The catalog. Disney didn't just buy blockbusters. They bought decades worth of films with untapped potential. Stories with proven audiences that nobody had done anything with in years. The Devil Wears Prada was sitting right there in that catalog. And here's the thing about Disney that separates them from most studios. They think in decades, not quarters. While other companies were chasing whatever was trending that month, Disney was quietly asking a different question. Which of these stories will people still care about in 20 years? The answer, it turns out, included a certain ice-cold fashion editor in a white bob and Prada coat. The world caught up to the movie. Here's the genuinely fascinating part of this whole story. The world of 2025 is almost perfectly set up for a Devil Wears Prada sequel. Think about what's changed since 2006. Back then, magazine editors like Miranda Priestly were at the absolute peak of their power. Print media dominated fashion. If Runway said something was in, it was in. Full stop. Today, completely different universe. Influencers with phones have more reach than entire magazines. TikTok can make a fashion trend explode overnight and kill it by Tuesday. Algorithms decide what gets seen. Artificial intelligence is starting to reshape creative industries in real time. The world Miranda Priestly once ruled has been turned completely upside down, which creates the most interesting question the sequel could possibly ask. What happens to someone like Miranda Priestly in this world? Does she adapt? Does she refuse to? Can authority and expertise and taste still matter when the internet has decided everyone's opinion is equally valid? Those questions make the sequel feel genuinely relevant rather than just nostalgic. And that's exactly the sweet spot Disney is aiming for. Not just, remember how much you loved this? But here's why it still matters right now. Legacy sequels and why this one is different. Legacy sequels are having a moment. Films returning decades after their originals were once considered risky. Now they're become major events. Studios figured out that nostalgia alone isn't enough. But nostalgia combined with beloved characters and something genuinely new to say, that's a different story entirely. The Devil Wears Prada too sits in a pretty ideal position for this. Miranda Priestly is one of the most fully realized characters in recent film history. She's not beloved despite being terrifying. She's beloved because of it. Audiences don't just remember her. They quote her. They dress as her for Halloween. They use her as a reference point for any boss who has ever made their life difficult. Andy Sachs remains one of the most relatable protagonists in modern cinema. Someone who got pulled into a world that wasn't hers, survived it, and came out the other side changed in ways she's still figuring out. There's real story left to tell here. The challenge, and it's a real one, is not leaning too hard on nostalgia. The sequels that fail usually do so because they're too busy reminding you of the original to be good on their own terms. The ones that work, trust that you remember, and then give you something new. 20 years of audience goodwill. Here's something Hollywood spends billions of dollars trying to manufacture. People who still care. 20 years later, audiences are still watching The Devil Wears Prada, still quoting it, still sharing scenes online, still asking, when is the sequel happening? That kind of longevity is almost impossible to engineer. Studios try constantly. Most of them fail. The Devil Wears Prada achieved it without even trying, just by being good enough that people kept coming back. And now, Disney gets to cash in on 20 years of that goodwill. That's not a small thing. That's the entire ball game. If the sequel delivers, and that's still an if, it won't just be a hit movie. It could become one of the most significant non-action franchise revivals in years. Not because of visual effects or massive spectacle, because people genuinely care about these characters. That's rarer than any special effect. So here's where we land. A movie that survived changing generations, collapsing media models, the streaming revolution, one of the largest corporate acquisitions in Hollywood history, and nearly 2 decades of being the sequel that was always almost happening. The Devil Wears Prada 2 is proof that some stories simply refuse to disappear. The fascinating thing isn't that it's finally happening. The fascinating thing is everything it had to survive to get here. Disney played the long game, accumulated the right assets, waited for the cultural moment to be right. And now they're holding one of the most valuable pieces of intellectual property that nobody was talking about when the deal got done. That's the 20-year Hollywood war. And Miranda Priestly, cold, patient, and absolutely certain she was right all along, would probably approve. That's all. You can go. Hit subscribe for more Hollywood deep dives, like if this one earned it. And drop a comment. Are you excited for the sequel, or do you think some classics should be left alone? See you in the next one.